The Galactic warriors stood atop a ridge, gazing down at the planet below. It was their newest conquest, another in a long line of victories that had spanned solar systems. They were a proud coalition, the finest soldiers from the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Massive figures, towering in their powered exosets, outfitted with cutting-edge weapons that could lay waste to armies in minutes. Their confidence was palpable, rippling through the ranks as they prepared to face the humans. Camouflage, one of the Vronka soldiers scoffed, his voice dripping with derision. They think hiding will help them? We see in spectrums they can't even imagine. Another warrior laughed, adjusting the sensors on his helmet. Primitive species. They should have surrendered when they had the chance. Humans, they thought, were still reliant on tricks that should have been obsolete eons ago. While they had evolved past such crude methods, humans still clung to their ancient tactics, like hiding in plain sight. The Galactic warriors saw it as nothing more than a relic of primitive combat, something to be mocked. To them, it was laughable that humans thought they could survive in a fight using mere camouflage against advanced tracking systems and thermal imaging. Deploy the scouts? Came the command from the coalition leader, a towering figure encased in gleaming armor that shimmered under the pale sun. Sweep the area, find them, and end this. Teams of scouts broke off into the terrain, their movements precise, practiced. They were the elite of the elite, their gear capable of detecting the slightest fluctuation in air pressure or the faintest trace of body heat. As they descended into the valley, they spread out, confident that it was only a matter of time before the humans' pathetic attempts at hiding would be exposed. This'll be over by sundown, a Relaxian scout muttered, his visor scanning for heat signatures. His readings came back empty, but he wasn't concerned. Their tech is outdated. We've got this. Hours passed, and still, they found nothing. The battlefield was unnervingly quiet. Too quiet. No movement, no chatter, no signs of human life. The trees and rocks loomed like silent sentinels, casting long shadows across the terrain, but there was no indication of an enemy force. Where the hell are they? A Kordak warrior grumbled, frustration creeping into his voice. His scanners picked up nothing but the usual ambient noise of the forest. They can't all be dead. They're hiding, another scout replied, though there was a hint of doubt in his voice now. Let them. When they do move, they'll be glowing on our sensors like fireflies. The Galactic warriors pressed on, deeper into the valley, their arrogance blinding them to the truth. They couldn't fathom that humans might have something more up their sleeves than outdated camouflage suits and primitive tactics. As the sun dipped lower, casting the landscape in an eerie twilight, an uneasy tension settled over the scouts. Something wasn't right. We should have seen them by now, one of the lead scouts muttered under his breath. His sensors flickered for a moment before stabilizing again. No movement, no heat signatures, nothing. Before anyone could respond, a Relaxian scout at the rear let out a strangled cry. The rest spun around, weapons raised, but there was no sign of the attacker. The Relaxian's body lay still, his armor's systems completely deactivated. What the hell? Another scout started, but before he could finish, he too was gone. No sound. No warning. Panic rippled through the group. The once confident, elite warriors now found themselves second-guessing everything. Their sensors showed nothing, yet their comrades were vanishing into thin air. The forest around them seemed to close in, the shadows stretching impossibly long. We've got hostiles! One of the scouts shouted, his weapon raised, eyes darting around the terrain. Invisible? Cloaked? How the hell are they doing this? But there was no response. The squad leader tried to rally the troops, barking orders for them to regroup. Yet, even as they pulled tighter, the attacks continued, silent, efficient, terrifying. One by one, the Galactic warriors were being picked off, their superior technology useless in the face of an enemy they couldn't see. Check your damn scanners! The leader yelled. Where are they? His voice was edged with fear now. I've got nothing! One of the survivors shouted back, frantically adjusting his visor. No heat, no movement, nothing on the electromagnetic spectrum. They're ghosts! More warriors fell, their bodies crumpling into the dirt without a sound. The elite galactic warriors, the pride of the galaxy, were being dismantled with terrifying precision. The few remaining soldiers grouped together in a defensive formation, their backs to one another. But even then, it wasn't enough. In the silence that followed, the survivors realized the truth: they had never been the hunters here. From the moment they had entered the valley, they had been prey. The humans weren't relying on primitive camouflage. They were using something far more sophisticated, far more deadly. One of the last remaining warriors, a veteran of countless battles, stared into the darkness with wide eyes. He muttered to himself, "They aren't hiding. They're everywhere." His words were the last spoken before the valley was plunged into complete silence. In the human command center, the atmosphere was calm but charged with focus. No one was rushing, no one was panicking. This wasn't humanity's first fight, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. They had been underestimated before. They'd learned to use that underestimation to their advantage. The tactical officer stood over a hollow map, the terrain of the battlefield displayed in glowing lines. Small markers represented the scattered teams of human soldiers, each one hidden, silent, and waiting. It was exactly how they wanted it. They weren't looking for a direct fight, they never were. Let the galactic warriors come. Let them walk right into the trap. "They've sent their scouts ahead," one of the officers reported, his tone clipped, professional. "They think they'll pick us off before the main force moves in." The commanding officer, a grizzled veteran of Earth's countless wars, allowed himself a small, grim smile. The galactic warriors were making the same mistake every overconfident enemy had made before. They believed their superior technology gave them the edge, and in some ways it did. But this wasn't just about tech. This was about the terrain, about strategy, and more importantly, about experience. Humans had centuries of experience fighting wars in every environment imaginable. "Let them come," the commander replied, his voice steady. "We've got the home field advantage." Human soldiers were dispersed, blending into the environment in ways no sensor could pick up. Their adaptive camouflage was a marvel of bioengineering, fusing the study of nature with the cutting edge of human innovation. It wasn't just about breaking up visual outlines. These soldiers could mask their heat signatures, dampen the sounds of their movements, even disrupt the electromagnetic fields around them to stay hidden from the enemy's technology. A younger officer, fresh to the battlefront, glanced up from his console. "Do you think it'll work, sir? Their scanners are supposed to be able to track anything." The commander didn't even look up. "Let them trust their scanners. That's the point. We've evolved past relying on one type of advantage. They haven't." He pointed to the map where the galactic scouts had started to filter through the valley, unaware that they were already being watched. The humans' camouflage wasn't just about invisibility, it was about adaptation, fluidity. Their gear allowed them to become part of the environment itself. If the galactic warriors looked for heat, they wouldn't find it. If they scanned for energy, it would slip through their fingers. The humans had designed their tactics around centuries of conflict, learning to use the smallest edge to maximum effect. "We've fought wars on Earth for thousands of years," the commander said, his voice low but filled with conviction. "The terrain always decides the victor. And right now, the terrain belongs to us." While the galactic warriors moved, the human teams remained utterly still. There was no chatter, no movement unless absolutely necessary. Every soldier knew their role, knew their objective. This wasn't about brute strength or overwhelming force. It was about precision. One shot, one kill, then vanish before anyone could respond. They didn't need to engage the entire force. The plan was simple: pick them off slowly, quietly, and watch the panic set in. The galactic warriors weren't used to fear. They were used to being the dominant force, crushing their enemies with overwhelming power. But humans? They had learned long ago that fear was a weapon just as effective as any gun. If you could make your enemy doubt their senses, if you could make them question what was real and what wasn't, then half the battle was already won. Reports started coming in from the scouts. One by one, they were being taken out, their messages cut off mid-sentence. It was happening exactly as planned. The humans moved like ghosts, invisible not just to sight but to every tool the Galactic warriors had at their disposal. They weren't just hiding in the shadows, they were becoming them. "First wave is falling back," an officer said, looking at the latest reports. "They're pulling out, but they don't know where the attacks are coming from." The commander nodded. "Good. Let them retreat. They'll be too scared to move forward until they figure out what's going on." This was the strength of human warfare. The Galactic warriors may have had the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but humans had something better. They had unpredictability. They could adapt to any situation, any environment, and use their enemies' strengths against them. The Galactic warriors relied on their machines, their systems, their sensors. Humans relied on instinct, on strategy, on centuries of learning how to survive when the odds were stacked against them. "Sir, the main force is preparing to move in. They think they've cleared the path," another officer reported, a hint of amusement in his voice. "They don't know we're still here." "They won't until it's too late," the commander replied. "Let them walk into the trap." As the Galactic warriors prepared for their full-scale assault, they still believed they had the upper hand. They had no idea that their advanced tech was being rendered useless. They didn't realize that the human forces were watching them from every angle, perfectly hidden, perfectly patient. And when the time was right, the humans would strike again. But not all at once. That wasn't the plan. They would let the fear build, let the Galactic warriors wonder where the next attack would come from. Let them grow paranoid, uncertain. It would be a slow burn, but by the time the Galactic warriors realized what was happening, it would be too late. For now, the humans waited. Waited for the moment when their enemy's arrogance would turn to desperation. Because that was the moment humans thrived in. When the enemy thought they had won, when they believed they were untouchable, that was when humanity was at its best. "We'll let them make the next move," the commander said quietly. "And when they do, we'll be ready." The Galactic warriors had regrouped, but the air around them was different now. The bravado that once filled their ranks had evaporated, replaced by a palpable tension that settled deep in their bones. No longer did they march with the same swagger, the certainty of victory in their step. Now they moved cautiously, scanning every shadow, jumping at the slightest noise. Their sensors had been recalibrated, upgraded with more aggressive filters, but still, they found nothing. One of the squad leaders, his voice edged with frustration, barked orders to his team. "Stay close. Keep your formations tight. We're not letting them pick us off again." His words were sharp, but underneath, there was a tremor. Even the toughest of them could feel it, the fear they weren't used to feeling. The silence stretched on, oppressive, as they moved through the terrain, the dense forest closing in around them. They had expected a clean sweep, but the humans were proving to be something else. Every step forward felt like they were being watched, though their scanners showed nothing. No heat, no movement, no trace of an enemy. "How the hell are they doing this?" one of the soldiers muttered, barely keeping his voice steady. "We've got the best tech in the galaxy. They're just gone." The squad leader gritted his teeth. "Doesn't matter. We'll flush them out. They can't hide forever." But deep down, they all knew that wasn't true. The humans weren't hiding. They were hunting. And they were doing it with terrifying efficiency. Every few minutes, the radio would crackle with the sound of another soldier going dark. No explosion, no gunfire, just silence. One moment they were there, and the next, nothing. "They're ghosts," another soldier whispered, his voice barely audible. "This isn't a battle, it's a slaughter." And it was. The Galactic warriors had always been the predators, feared across the stars for their ruthlessness and power. But now they were the prey. They couldn't understand it. How could a species that was supposed to be weak, primitive, and lacking in advanced technology be doing this to them? Their pride and confidence were turning into doubt, then fear, and fear into panic. Suddenly, there was movement, a brief flicker on one of the soldiers' scanners. "I've got something!" he shouted, raising his weapon. His visor zoomed in, tracking the faint disturbance in the trees. The rest of the squad turned to face the same direction, weapons primed. The leader barked, "Hold your fire! We need confirmation!" But before he could finish, the signal vanished. Just like that, it was gone. "Damn it!" the soldier cursed, lowering his weapon, eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell is going on?" The squad leader's fists clenched. "They're toying with us. They know we can't see them." The realization hit them all at once. The humans weren't hiding because they were scared. They were doing it because they could. They were leading the Galactic warriors on, making them chase shadows, wasting their energy and resources. Every step they took deeper into the terrain was a step closer to their doom, and they knew it. "We've got to pull back," one of the soldiers said, his voice shaking now. "This is suicide. We're sitting ducks out here." But there was no time to retreat. Another soldier vanished from the back of the formation, disappearing into the shadows without so much as a sound. Panic rippled through the squad, and all at once, their tight formation fell apart. "They're picking us off! We need backup!" But there was no backup coming. The main force had already lost contact with too many units. They had no idea where the human forces were or how they were managing to take out entire squads without leaving any trace. The commander at headquarters had issued orders for the remaining units to hold their positions and regroup, but that was easier said than done. The Galactic warriors were beginning to break. The humans had hit them where it hurt the most, not their armor, not their weapons, but their minds. They had always been the hunters, always the ones in control. But now, they were lost, directionless, and afraid. Every shadow, every flicker of movement became a threat. "They're using the terrain against us," the leader muttered under his breath, realizing just how outclassed they were in this kind of warfare. "We never had a chance." It was more than just camouflage now. The humans were using tactics the Galactic warriors had never seen before. They were fighting a psychological war, and they were winning. The warriors' advanced tech was worthless if they couldn't even trust their own senses. "Keep it together!" the leader shouted, trying to regain control. "We regroup, and we push forward. We'll find them and take them down." But as they pressed on, the feeling of dread only deepened. They knew, even if they didn't want to admit it, that every step forward was just leading them further into the trap. The humans were waiting, and when they were ready, they would strike again. This wasn't going to end in a glorious battle. It was going to end in silence, just as the first attacks had. One of the younger warriors, his hands trembling, spoke up. What if we don't make it back?" The squad leader didn't respond. He couldn't. For the first time in his long, decorated career, he didn't have an answer. Because deep down, he knew the truth. They wouldn't make it back. Not all of them. The humans had turned the battlefield into their hunting ground. And for the first time in galactic history, the Galactic warriors were facing an enemy they couldn't outthink, outfight, or outmaneuver. The Galactic warriors were unraveling. What had started as a mission of confidence and domination was quickly devolving into chaos. The remaining squads had finally regrouped, huddled together in a defensive posture, weapons at the ready, eyes scanning every inch of the landscape. But it didn't matter how tightly they formed up. They knew the enemy was out there, and they knew their technology couldn't help them. The humans had rendered it obsolete. One of the squad leaders tried to rally the troops, shouting orders over the crackling comms. "We've got the numbers, we've got the firepower. We just need to flush them out." His voice carried authority, but the fear was there, buried just beneath the surface. The others heard it too. The problem was, no one knew how to flush the humans out. They had no idea where to start. Their heat sensors, motion trackers, and electromagnetic scanners were useless. Every piece of high-tech equipment they relied on had failed. The humans weren't just avoiding detection, they were outsmarting the very technology the Galactic warriors prided themselves on. "They're using us," one soldier muttered under his breath, his eyes wide with disbelief. "They're making us move where they want us." It was true, and they all knew it. The humans weren't hiding randomly. Every time the Galactic warriors tried to advance, They found themselves funneled into tighter and more dangerous spaces, their options for retreat shrinking by the second. The humans were controlling the battlefield like a chessboard, pushing their pieces into position without ever revealing their hand. Suddenly there was movement, this time closer than ever before. One of the soldiers flinched, raising his weapon toward the sound. But before he could fire, the noise stopped. It was nothing. Just another trick. They were all on edge now, their nerves fraying with every second that passed. "They're not even fighting us," one of the younger warriors said, his voice shaking. "They're just watching." It was a terrifying thought. The Galactic warriors had always been the ones to initiate combat, to bring the fight to their enemies. But this was something else entirely. The humans didn't need to fight. They just needed to wait. Wait until the Galactic warriors were tired, confused, and desperate. The squad leader clenched his fists, trying to maintain control. "Enough of this. We're not sitting ducks. We move forward, take back control of this battlefield." But even as he spoke, there was doubt in his voice. They all knew what was happening. The humans had been playing them from the start, and now the Galactic warriors were trapped in a game they didn't understand. A game they had no chance of winning. The soldiers began to push forward, their formations tight, weapons ready. But their movements were hesitant, uncertain. Every step felt wrong, like they were walking into a trap they couldn't see. They moved from cover to cover, but the humans remained elusive, nowhere to be found. "They're leading us into something," another soldier muttered, glancing over his shoulder as though expecting an attack from any direction. And that was the worst part. They didn't know where the attack would come from. The humans could be anywhere, in any shadow, behind any tree or rock. Every inch of the landscape felt hostile, and the Galactic warriors had no idea where the danger was hiding. They had never been this vulnerable before. Suddenly, one of the soldiers let out a shout. "I've got something!" His voice was frantic as his scanners picked up a blip, something faint but definitely there. The others turned, weapons raised, their tension building into a crescendo. But just as quickly as the blip appeared, it vanished. Another false alarm. Another trick. Another sign that the humans were in complete control. The squad leader cursed under his breath. "Damn it! They're messing with our sensors. They know exactly what we're looking for." The panic was spreading now, faster than anyone could control. The Galactic warriors had been trained for every type of combat imaginable, but this wasn't combat. This was psychological warfare, and the humans were masters of it. The more the warriors tried to track their enemy, the more they realized they were chasing ghosts. "I can't do this," one of the younger soldiers finally broke, his voice trembling as he looked around wildly. "We can't beat them like this." The squad leader tried to regain control, barking orders to keep the troops in line. But it was no use. The fear was setting in too deep. The humans had done what no one else had ever done. They had broken the Galactic warriors without firing a single shot. As they pressed forward, the terrain grew more treacherous, the paths narrowing into choke points where they knew the humans could strike at any moment. But still, nothing came. No attacks. No ambushes. Just silence, broken only by the distant hum of malfunctioning sensors. The squad leader's frustration boiled over. "Where are they?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the trees. "Come out and fight!" But the humans wouldn't fight. They didn't need to. Instead, another soldier went down. No sound, no warning, just gone. The warriors scrambled, their formations collapsing as panic finally took full hold. They were no longer an elite fighting force. They were prey, and they knew it. One by one, the Galactic warriors were being picked off, disappearing into the shadows without so much as a trace. The humans moved with surgical precision, always one step ahead, always just out of reach. The warriors tried to regroup, but it was too late. The fear had already taken root. "We're not going to make it out of here," one of the soldiers said, his voice hollow, resigned to the inevitable. The squad leader didn't respond. He couldn't. He knew they were beaten. The humans had won this battle not with superior technology or brute force, but with patience, cunning, and a strategy the Galactic warriors had never expected. The once mighty coalition of elite soldiers was now nothing more than a scattered, broken group, fighting against an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't touch, and couldn't defeat. The humans had turned the battlefield into a maze of fear and confusion, and the Galactic warriors were lost, hopelessly outmatched. The final group of Galactic warriors stood in a makeshift defensive circle, weapons raised, eyes scanning every angle. They had been reduced to a handful, their once formidable numbers decimated. The forest around them was silent, oppressive, as if the very air had thickened with dread. None of them spoke, not anymore. Words were meaningless now. The humans had taken everything: confidence, control, and the last remnants of hope. Each soldier was exhausted, their bodies aching from the relentless march, their minds fractured by the constant tension of waiting for an attack that never came. They had been whittled down to their most basic instincts, reduced to fear and survival. Their advanced weaponry, designed to crush entire armies, felt useless in their hands. All their sophisticated sensors, their elite training, had failed them. The squad leader, who had held them together for so long, now stood at the center of the group, his face a mask of grim acceptance. He had no orders left to give, no strategies to employ. All he could do was stand and wait, knowing that the end was near. One of the soldiers shifted nervously, his eyes darting to the shadows. "They're out there, watching us," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. The others didn't respond. They knew it was true. The humans had been watching them for hours, maybe even days. They had been toying with them, playing a game that only they understood. The Galactic warriors had come to this planet expecting an easy victory, but now they were little more than prey, hunted by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Suddenly, there was a flicker of movement in the distance. One of the soldiers raised his weapon, ready to fire, but the squad leader stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "No," the leader said, his voice low and steady. "That's what they want. Stay calm." But calm was a distant memory. Each soldier's breath came in shallow gasps, the weight of their failure pressing down on them. They had never experienced this before, this helplessness. The Galactic warriors were supposed to be the best, the undefeated champions of the galaxy. And yet, here they were, cowering like animals in the dark. The leader glanced around at the few remaining soldiers. They looked back at him, their eyes filled with uncertainty, waiting for some kind of reassurance. But there was nothing left to say. They all knew how this was going to end. Without warning, one of the soldiers collapsed. No sound, no visible wound, just gone. The others froze, their weapons raised in every direction, but there was no target, no enemy to strike back at. Another soldier fell, then another. "They're right here!" one of the survivors screamed, his voice breaking. "They're right here, but we can't see them!" Panic took over, the formation falling apart as the remaining warriors scrambled to find cover. But cover meant nothing now. The humans had already won. They weren't going to strike all at once. They didn't need to. They had complete control of the battlefield, and they were going to finish this on their terms. The squad leader knew it was over. He lowered his weapon, staring out into the trees, into the empty spaces where the humans had been lurking all along. He had fought in countless wars, against enemies more powerful, more aggressive than humans, but never like this. He had never faced an enemy that understood fear so well, that could use it as a weapon as effectively as any blade or gun. "We lost the moment we stepped onto this planet," the leader muttered, more to himself than to the others. "They were ready for us." Another soldier went down, and then there were only 3 left. The leader didn't bother giving orders anymore. What was the point? They had been reduced to nothing. The humans had dismantled them piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the inevitable conclusion. One of the soldiers, his hands shaking, turned to the leader. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice filled with desperation. "How do we stop them?" The leader looked at him, a sad smile on his face. "We can't. They've already won." The soldier blinked, as if the reality of their situation was finally sinking in. "But we're the Galactic Warriors. We don't lose." The leader's smile faded. "We did today." Another moment of silence passed, and then the humans struck again. This time, there was no subtlety, no slow attrition. They finished the job quickly, efficiently. The last 2 soldiers went down in seconds, leaving the leader standing alone in the center of the battlefield. He stood there for a moment, staring out at the empty forest. He couldn't see the humans, but he knew they were there, watching, waiting for the final move. He felt a strange sense of peace wash over him, an understanding that this had been more than just a battle. It had been a lesson, one he hadn't understood until now. "You fought well," he said softly, addressing the invisible enemy. "We were just outmatched." A shadow moved in the distance, and the leader closed his eyes. He didn't need to see what was coming. He knew it was over. And then, in an instant, it was. The humans had done what no other species had managed in centuries of warfare. They had beaten the Galactic Warriors, not with superior firepower or advanced technology, but with strategy, patience, and a mastery of fear. They had used the terrain to their advantage, turned every strength of the Galactic Warriors against them, and picked them apart with surgical precision. As the last of the Galactic Warriors fell, the battlefield returned to silence. The humans, still unseen, slipped back into the shadows, leaving nothing behind but the echoes of a victory won long before the first shot was ever fired.